Welcome to the Bonhoeffer Project podcast. Welcome. I mean, seriously, welcome. We are truly glad that you're here today. Stephen Kimbrell, Stephen
Yes.
H. Kimbrell, Stephen L. Kimbrell, the doctor, the Reverend Stephen H. Kimbrell.
It keeps growing every time.
One of these days, I'm going to get it right as we start.
Yes.
How are you today?
I'm great.
Good. I'm really excited about our topic today. Would you take a second and introduce to our listeners what we're talking about?
Absolutely. We are talking about distractions that pastors specifically face when it comes to disciple making.
Yes.
So we're going to go through 5 specific distractions.
Yeah.
And I think it's something all pastors deal with, right?
100%. We're always, I mean, there's a million distractions in our world today.
Yeah. And we all
And good distractions.
good distractions.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? It's not typically the bad things
No.
that are distracting us. It's good things.
It's good things.
It's just sometimes not the best thing,
Not the best thing.
which we think the best thing is disciple making.
We do. I
That's-
think unashamedly,
Yeah.
we believe disciple making is the best thing we could be doing.
But the church, and I say the church as an organization, sometimes has a way of distracting from that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to dive into that and go through a few of these that I think a lot of you guys will relate to. So
So how many we got?
we got 5.
5 of them. Okay.
Five.
Let's dissect them.
Distraction number 1 for pastors, administrative task. So administrative task. If people are listening who are not pastors, they think that Sunday just happens, right? Like
Just get
just
up
walk
there.
up, preach.
Yeah,
and-
that's all we're doing.
exactly.
They don't see anything else throughout the week.
No, but the reality is there's a lot of administrative tasks behind the scenes, and if pastors aren't careful, those administrative tasks can add up and even take away from time that could be spent making disciples. So, Dan, I don't know, maybe you could think of some examples. Any administrative tasks that you face?
I mean, there's okay. So let me just be real clear with you. I'm just going to say it now. I'm at a fairly large church, but I am terrible
yeah,
at using an assistant. Okay, I'm just being honest about my flaws.
yeah,
And part of that is, again, I'm not trying to, it's going to come across prideful. If I set my heart and mind to do something, I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah.
I do know my limitations.
is that the prideful part?
Pretty much.
Okay, good.
Well, because I know I can do that.
Yeah,
I know if given, like, I'm the guy
Yeah.
who will watch YouTube to figure out how to lay flooring, hang cabinetry,
yeah,
do
yeah.
all these things. Why
Yeah.
pay someone when you can figure out how to do it yourself? Like, that's always my mindset.
Yeah.
And I've had that for so long
Yeah.
that I've learned how to be very self-sufficient
Yeah,
in what I do on a daily basis. It's hard to delegate tasks when you're that way.
right. Yeah,
So even simple things, mentally, I'm like, I could do that. And part of that is, to be just real clear, well, they've got other stuff that they're doing. Let me do this. I can handle it. I
Yeah.
can do that.
yeah,
And I've literally told my executive assistant here, you need to physically take things from me. Like, say,
Yeah.
I've got that. Because I'm very self-sufficient in that way. And again, it's not like no one can do it better than I can.
Right.
Many people can do it better than I can.
yeah,
But I've just gotten so used to being self-sufficient
yeah.
that I don't know when to hand off things that other people can do and do better.
Yeah. Well, I think that makes sense. I think every pastor listening resonates with that because I think most pastors are doers by
Sure.
nature. We
Yep.
like to get stuff done. We
Yep.
don't want to see something sit there. We want to make it happen. If it's event planning,
For sure.
for me, kind of that's my Achilles heel
Yep.
because there's always an event. And I like planning
Yep.
events.
Yep.
I want it to go really, really well.
Yep.
And same thing, like, oh, I can do that.
Yep.
Oh, and so, yeah, I think as pastors, I think part of what I'm hearing is we really have to work at saying no to some good things.
Yep.
So that we can say yes to
When
the
you
best
gotta
things.
be able to hand the keys to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and listen, I've seen there's basically 2 types of pastors. There's the pastors who are like you're saying, do everything.
Yeah.
But then there's the ones that delegate everything.
Yeah.
You know, and all they do is show up and teach.
Yeah.
You know, obviously we don't want either of those. We want a
Right.
balance between the two. But I mean, really, when we're talking about disciple making, like admin tasks, dude, it's a great thing to practically disciple people into the life of the church, the back end work, what we do, how we can serve one another by helping in these very good and doable and needed tasks. But I don't necessarily need to do all of those. There are things, and again, for me, what it was realizing what are the things that only I can do.
That's a good question.
And I mean that just in my role for such a time as this. I'm not saying somebody couldn't do it at another time in, you know, I'm just saying for right now in my position and role, what is something that only I can do?
Yeah.
That's what I need to focus on. Do the best of my ability, give it my all, and then everything else, not that I would delegate everything, but my priorities are the things that only I can do. And then the other stuff I can task and help and shepherd and disciple people into those roles.
Good stuff. Okay, so for administrative tasks, we're saying prioritize and delegate.
That's right.
And there's plenty of books and articles on that.
There's much.
Yeah,
There's
get someone to
much
hold you
written there.
accountable.
There's
You can
much
do it.
written there.
Okay, number 2, the second distractions that I think a lot of pastors really deal with is preparing sermons. And
Now unbox that, because when you know, as a pastor, I mean, we got to spend some time there. So we're not saying don't spend time.
We're not saying it's bad,
but it can be all consuming.
Exactly. Yeah, I think, you know, I'm thinking about this through things that I've dealt with. I love to go to the pulpit super prepared.
Sure.
So it takes me a long time to really dive into a text and to kind of get what some have called the other side of complex. So to go through simple to complex to then unpack it, or I guess to pack it again into simple where people can understand it. So it takes me some time.
Let me practical question for you. What's your sermon prep look like? Like, do you Monday? Because obviously you're teaching on Sunday. What's your weekly prep look like? I know pastors all over the place love to hear what other people. What's your prep time like?
Yeah, you know what works for me right now in this season? I'd love to say like, hey, I'm 6 months ahead, and I know guys who do that, and that's not me. It's not me in this season. I typically know where I'm going. I'm in a series, and then on Tuesday morning at 7:00, I'm diving into the text, trying to understand it, figuring out exactly how I'm going to unpack it, and then I'm back at it Wednesday morning and Thursday morning. So I'm usually hitting those mornings until lunchtime. Hopefully with the goal of getting it all wrapped up on Thursday, and if not, then I'm putting finishing touches on it on Saturday.
Absolutely.
And so I try to keep it within those boundaries, because here's the reality. There's a point where you got diminishing returns on it. Okay. You know, once I go over that like 13, 14 hour mark, like I'm not really moving the needle on it getting better.
You're not getting any more out of it. Yeah.
And so for me, there's a good phrase my wife likes to say. It's called GETMO, which is good enough to move on. GETMO. And like so I have to get to that point because the reality is I obviously have a responsibility of preaching the word to our people, but I also have a responsibility of investing in a few. Throughout the week, whether that's one-on-ones or my group of guys that I'm meeting with, and I can't let one responsibility
dictate the whole thing.
Hurt the other. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, my sermon prep is Saturday night, ChatGPT. I just ask it what. No, I'm just kidding. For those of you listen, I'm just kidding. I don't do that. No, my sermon prep's Monday. Because Sunday, what I just preached is fresh in my mind, so I know where we've been. Which helps me kind of determine the path where we're going to take that. So I can really tie last week to this week. And I get probably 70% of my sermon done on Monday. And then it's throughout the week, adding to, embellishing a bit in the sense of like a good scripture illustration throughout the week. But it's constant. Like it's constant. I think that's a good thing. But in terms of, like you said, that GETMO is great because we've got to be able to move on. And I know guys who, again, it's few and far between, but guys who literally all they do is sermon prep.
Right.
Like all week. They're not doing anything else. And I think there's many who think that their sermon prep is synonymous with discipleship.
Right.
So, well, I'm teaching the word, so it is discipleship. So my prep and delivering of the word, it's one and the same. They're the same thing. But
I mean, there's a level, right?
There's a level.
There's a level of
word.
discipleship that is happening on a Sunday, but not the life on life. in the
Absolutely.
weeds with guys, fleshing things out.
That's right.
That just can't happen at that time.
That's right. So yeah, and I think for us as pastors, I believe you won't understand fully how to preach the sermon, the text, like you said, where you kind of take it high level and you get down into the weeds and then you package it so that people can get it. If you don't know
Right.
who's in the weeds,
Exactly.
your message may be highfalutin.
You're living in
And
the
seminary
ivory tower.
Yeah, seminary professors are giving you an applause.
Yeah.
But if the common man doesn't get it, I know a guy, there's a pastor friend of mine, check this out. This is, again, brilliant. Shout out if he's listening. But he does his sermon prep at the Waffle House at about midnight to 2 a.m.
Saturday night?
No, not Saturday night, praise God, during the week.
Yeah.
Because he says, if it doesn't make sense to the people that I chill with
Oh,
at
wow.
the Waffle House,
Yeah.
the people ain't going to hear it.
Yeah.
And
good.
that's a real, because the way it is for me too is I look out. I can look at my congregation. I can see seminary grads and guys with MDivs and doctorates.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't have any of that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've got some, but I don't got that, right?
Yeah,
And it's got to make sense to them. But then you're seeing non-believers.
Right.
It doesn't make sense to them.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that relational just marker in your life and that outlet, you're going to miss it. And so that's why you can't spend all of your time in sermon prep.
Yeah.
You've got to be in people's lives, dealing with their tragedies, dealing with their issues, and making sure you've got enough bandwidth, good enough to move on. You got to get there.
Yeah. Eventually. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's we've got 2. We've got number 3, meetings and committees. Meetings and committees.
Yeah.
Do you like meetings?
When I call them,
Yeah.
I'm pretty cool with them. When I'm called to them, I'm like, what am I doing here?
You don't. What about the? Hey, Pastor, can we get lunch? I need to talk to you about
Yeah,
something.
those are the worst. I'm always I rarely take a meeting
Yeah.
with someone who does not tell me the subject matter.
Yeah,
Because I'm like, listen,
usually
I'm not
not
going
good.
in blind. I'm not coming in with zero prayer or prep or guards in my heart to make sure that it's not going to be just, somebody's got a tack hammer and they're swinging it hard.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want that. But yeah, there's something about, meetings, dreaded meetings.
Yeah.
Hey, we need to talk. And it's like, this is my worst one. Hey, you got 10 minutes? Hey, you got 5 minutes?
It's never that time.
It's
right?
never. Hey, you got 30 seconds. Those are the worst. The ones you
Yeah.
say it's 30 second,
Yeah.
the question's 30 seconds. The answer could be days.
Yeah.
And so we can get caught up. What's your strategy for kind of maintaining that balance between,
Yeah.
because I know guys, and listen, to be honest, I've had days where like I come home, my wife's like, how was your day? I'm like, I just had meetings, like literally all day.
All day. Yeah.
And I don't know if I moved the needle at all.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
it feels like that sometimes. Right?
Sometimes you just got into the weeds. What's your kind of
Yeah.
cadence to that?
I think two things that I've learned slowly over time. I think one is learning to embrace my limits.
Yeah.
In that I'm not God. I can't be everywhere. I can't be
Sure.
all things to all people. And I don't have to be. I think
Yeah.
that's one. I think the other thing is something we actually do if you're going through the Bonhoeffer Project. So we all did this. Remember when we put our calendar kind of on the screen, or you write your calendar on the board and you say, okay, here's my weekly calendar, and you look at it and like, oh, I don't have any time. And then part of the project is you go through and you figure out, okay, what could I cut? And then where can I put discipleship in? And I think, honestly, that simple trick of planning your week before the week
Absolutely. Plans
plans
you.
itself or plans you.
Yeah.
And so then you literally, like if you have a value of making disciples, if that's your goal, then you've got to schedule that.
That's right.
And I understand it all can't be scheduled, but you do schedule time.
Yeah.
And I think blocking out that time. And so when those pop up, hey, can you do this? Well, if I've already got it on the schedule, I'm already meeting with so-and-so, I've got this thing happening, then I don't move those things.
That's right.
And so for me, that keeps me honest and protects that time.
Well, and that's it. Well, I think you said it right. And I think that's something that everyone here needs to recognize. If you don't prioritize your time, you will be at the end of the week saying, what happened? It's a blur. I even take it, it's basically a line from Financial Peace, Dave Ramsey. You know, he said at the beginning of the month, you set a budget, which is telling your money where to go instead of at the end of the month saying, where did it all go?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with your time. If you're not
Exactly.
budgeting your time and saying, I've got time for this, that, and the other, then you're at the end of the week and you don't know if you've moved the needle. You don't know if you've made any difference anywhere. And you're going, it's just blurry. Like,
Yeah.
what was that? You missed sleep.
Yeah.
Meetings weren't productive.
Yeah.
You're no good. You know, it's one of those. I like to think of it as like, are you shooting birdshot, or are you a sharpshooter? Like, are you aiming, focused, getting the stuff done that needs to get done, or are you just kind of
Yeah.
randomly shooting towards something and hoping to hit something?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Like, I can't function that way. And to me, and again, for those of you listening, if you're not living by a calendar, if you don't schedule things, like I've gotten to the point where I'm scheduling little breaks,
Bathroom
time for
break.
this. Well, maybe not that far. That's more the Lord schedules that for me. The Lord, he puts me on notice. But like, truly, like, when does your day start?
Yeah.
Like, does it start at the same time every day? Like
Yeah.
I have an alarm. I never use my alarm. It's set, but I always wake up at the same time
Yeah.
every day.
Just a machine.
That's it. But here's why: because I go to bed at the same time.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
So it's a consistent consistency that's built into the life. And if disciple making is part of that consistency, it's another thing
Yeah.
that you're doing throughout the week. But again, this kind of goes to, if it's not a priority for you, how could it be a priority for your people?
Right. Yeah. And that's it. You have to make it a priority. You have to schedule it in, because we talked about delegating things earlier. You can't delegate what's your mission.
No.
Right. You just you can't do that.
No. And
you
I
definitely do
remember,
it.
and you can listen back to some of the other podcasts where I share the story of when I really felt the Lord, I saw scripturally like the mandate that I believe a lot of the church is unintentionally being unintentional about,
Yeah.
which is, intentional disciple making. I was buying all the curriculum. I'm like, I'm going to get somebody to read all this and tell us what we should do.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to hire a guy
You were gonna
to
delegate
do
it.
I was going to delegate it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was like, well, you can't ask your people to do something you won't do yourself. And I looked around. I don't think I know. I never, up until 3 years ago, ever intentionally discipled somebody.
Yeah.
I passively did it. I did it, in short spurts. Hey, let's meet up. Let's have lunch. It wasn't until I'm like, this is what we're doing. This is what I'm doing. Right? Because it's easy for pastors to say, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Here, go do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
It's so easy, for you.
I got a
not
church
for me.
to run. I don't
That's
have
right.
time to
Yeah, I'm
disciple
busy.
people.
That's what I'm here to tell you. You all need to do this. What else we got?
Okay, number 4, and can I just preface it and say this one's going to sound bad? Like when I say
you're going to say it, it's going to sound
just like preaching did.
harsh.
Pastoral care. And when I say pastoral care, I mean responding to crisis,
Sure.
hospital visitation, counseling,
Yep.
all those kind of things that would typically fall under pastoral care.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Where do we go with that?
It's a hard one because if you're a shepherd of the sheep, you hurt when the sheep hurt. Now, let me just be clear. There's differences between small churches, larger churches, churches with bigger budgets,
that's a
smaller
good point.
budgets. I want to make sure people understand that because, like, if you're at a church plant, you got less than 100 people in your church, you're going to be doing most of those visits.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's just the way it is in the context with what you're doing, right? And the season that you're in.
Yeah.
In my context, I'm in a church where I have 12 other pastors, actually, plus our board, of pastors. We got a bunch of guys
Yeah.
who I can delegate. Hey, go visit that one. Go visit them. Hey, that home fellowship needs a visit, whatever it may be. But it's hard because, and I'll just give you a perfect example story. There was, this is probably a few months ago. My wife got a phone call. So at home, late in the evening, get a phone call. My wife is like, hey, it's for you. And I'm like, what? And it was a friend of a friend who got my wife's number. Hey, my grandson's in the hospital. I need Pastor Dan to get down there right away.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm at home. I'm with my family. There's a moment there where you're like, okay, is this the emergency that it needs to be? Do my prayers and presence, obviously they mean more to the family,
Sure.
but is it necessary right now? Do I?
Yeah.
Now, in that case, it was the close proximity of that family to me. I was down there, drove whatever it was, 45 minutes to the hospital that they were at, and, you know, prayed over them, and it was sweet. Fast forward, and again, not going to get too deep into the weeds, but there was another person who just left our church recently because one of the big things is they didn't get a phone call in the hospital. Not from any pastor, because a lot of pastors called him, but from me. And there's that rub where it's like, how you know, I can't be everywhere all the time. And I think for pastors, we've got to recognize, like, you're not Jesus.
Right.
You're not Savior. You can't do it all. Like, I mean, I think a lot of us do. Like, we think we're going to open up our shirt and there's a super pastor shirt and we're just going to fly in, swoop in, and save the day.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I don't want people to rely on me or to find comfort in my care, my shepherding, but I also can't be everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
There are things that I'm going to have to say, I can't. Like, I'm only one man.
Yeah.
What do you find?
Well, and I think, you know, it goes to the reminder that the Great Commission is visiting people in the hospital, being there for them. That's a part of pastoral ministry.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to minimize that.
No.
That's important, but it's still not the Great Commission.
Right.
And I think the Great Commission supersedes that.
Sure.
And so, again, that's not, I think as a pastor, I have a responsibility to make sure my flock is cared for.
Right.
And sometimes that means equipping others
There you go.
to do that.
Absolutely.
And I am in a church plant, and and we try to, one of the things we try to do is equip our small groups, equip our teams to offer care and support and that kind of thing. So I do think there are some things that you can do, but I think going back to what you said as a pastor, you have to realize you can't do it all, and then also realize that, like, this making disciples thing, it's super important. But unlike pastoral care, I don't think anyone's ever going to call and say, emergency, I need to be discipled. Like, and so it has to be prioritized.
Right. And I think that's true, though, because I would find myself oftentimes just, listen, as a shepherd, you do want to shepherd people, and you want to be there for people.
And feels good.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Like when you get a card, thank you for caring for us. I mean, there's something about that that's like, or when they're well and they come and they give you a hug, it was so good to see you in the hospital. But I mean, there's been times, and if I can share kind of a hilarious story, I went to visit someone in the hospital one time, and they were so drugged up. They thought I was a demon. And I'm not kidding. It was like they were flipping out, and my presence, you know, and like they came back and apologized that I came.
Yeah.
Like, hey, pastor, sorry that I called you a demon, and I was out of it. And I'm like, I know.
Obviously.
Like I saw that. So I mean, just there's some situations that you find yourself in that, again, maybe hey, I'm going to pray for you over the phone. I'm going to pray for you from here. And it's hard. I mean, there's people on their deathbed.
Use technology.
I had someone, I was, and again, this is just, I wish I could have. There was a brother in our church, this is several years ago, who was on his deathbed. And I didn't get there in time. You know, I missed it by 10 minutes, and there was a little bit of, you know, if you'd have been here sooner kind of thing. And, you know, you think of Jesus, like, you know, if you'd have been here sooner, you know, Lazarus, you know, and it just, there's that. So, I mean, even Jesus went through it.
Right.
Even Jesus went through it. If you'd just been on time, if you just cared more. And, you know, Jesus is like, no, that's not the case. And, you know, it's not for a lack of caring. I'm just one person. Right. And like you said, I think we need to equip people, equip the saints for the work of ministry. That's the task of the pastor.
Yep.
Amen.
Okay, one more.
Last one. What we got?
And this one really ties into the last one. Church expectations. And so I think this is something every leader feels,
Sure.
from whatever group or organization they lead. But I think especially in a church,
Yeah.
pastors feel the expectations, and those expectations are as different as the people in the congregation,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I mean, there's expectations to grow the church. There's expectations to visit in the hospital. There's 1,000 expectations that people have of a pastor. And so I think a snare, if you will, a
Sure.
trap that we can fall into
Yep.
is trying to meet all those expectations.
Sure.
Which leaves us very tired,
Right.
and leaves little time for making disciples.
Right. Well, and I think the other side of that too is what as a church is your priority? Because it's true. Again, we live, unfortunately, in a church culture where, and again, this is at least for where we are in Southern California. You don't like this church, there's another one 2 minutes down the road, and maybe that's more your speed, or that's they've got the kids program you really want, or they've got the preaching is the things you want to hear, whatever it may be. And I think sometimes that lends itself to when you're trying to be all things to all men, in a bad way. You've become like a concierge, you become like a customer service manager, and you're trying to balance. But if you're telling your people, hey, this is what our priority is, hey, that's a great idea, but we can't do that right now because that'll take us away from our mission, or it'll take us away from the best idea. It'll take us away from what we're called to do as this local body. And I think that's part of, again, as our job, pastoral ministry, especially in a culture that we obviously want to make disciples, that's got to be at the forefront. It's always got to be pushed on people, in the forefront of their minds. Because if we're not saying that constantly, I think they're like, oh, look at this new shiny thing. We're like, no. Remember? Remember, we're over here. We're making disciples. But there's shiny stuff.
Right.
Look at what that church is doing. But we're trying to fulfill the Great Commission. And so I think managing those expectations, even of yourself, because I think, we have, if we're driven, which most pastors that I know are, we want to succeed.
Right.
And well, what does success look like? In your context, what are you trying to do? What's the mission?
That's good. I agree. I think expectations are real, but as leaders, we have to work to corral those expectations. And I understand we can't control people, right? But helping people reframe those expectations.
Right.
Like, here's what our church is committed to doing. Here's what I'm committed to doing as a pastor. Here's the direction that we're going. And as we consistently kind of beat that drum and cast that vision, it begins to reshape what our people expect. And if you're listening and you are in, a church that was established in 1892, then this is going to take some
It's
time.
gonna take time.
It's not like you get up next week and say, hey, we're a disciple making church and you guys need to change your expectations.
And I would even counsel you not to do that, because you've got to manage those expectations and administer change in a way and at a rate people can absorb. Because if you don't do that, then people won't catch the vision.
Right.
You've jerked the wheel of the ship and everybody fell off the boat. And you just look back and you go, where is everybody? You buried the throttle. Everyone rolled off the back of the boat. And you look back, seeing if everybody's having a good time and you're the only one on the boat. Like, you have to recognize that change takes time. If you're in a legacy church and you've been doing the same thing and the expectations are, well, come again next week. And now you're moving towards a missional mindset of, hey, we're making disciples. It's going to take a while for people to catch on. I mean, we're still, it's been almost 4 years now, 3.5, that we've been intentionally speaking discipleship at our church. And there's still people wondering, like, so when are we moving on to the next thing? When are we done with this whole discipleship thing? And it's funny because no, like, this is our DNA. Like, this is like, it's like, when's this water going to stop being wet? It ain't going to happen. Like, this is how it is. And that's hard for people because people are like, oh, Pastor Dan's he's on a kick. Next year, maybe it'll be evangelism. Maybe the next year it'll be missions. It's like, no, we're going to make disciples. All that stuff will come. But again, I think some of it is the tempering of expectations.
Yeah.
Because I think some people look around, right, with the internet, the YouTube, and all that other stuff. There's all sorts of look at what this church.
Did
is
you
doing.
just say the YouTube?
The YouTubes?
Okay.
The YouTubes. The YouTubes, the Instagram, the InstaShare,
Whatever the kids are doing these days.
the Tiki Tacky, whatever it is.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the kids are on. Sorry, I had to do it. But the idea is, what is it
Yeah.
that because they're looking over the fence.
Yeah.
Saying, look what this church is. Why aren't we, Pastor?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll get inundated
Mm-hmm.
with letters and emails. Hey, Pastor, you need to preach on this. Hey,
Yeah.
Pastor,
Yeah.
hey, there's these starving kids in this one place. Like, why aren't we doing something?
Yeah. Yeah. All great things.
All
right?
great
All
things.
great things. And I think
Bleeding heart stuff. There was a tornado in Mississippi. There was
Yeah.
a tornado in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
There was an earthquake in. Why aren't we? Are we sending a team?
Right.
Pastor, where are we?
Mhm.
Why don't you have a team ready? Just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, and I think if we can kind of summarize this whole episode, we're saying again, all of these things, none of the things we mentioned
Right.
are bad things. We're
None of
not
them at all.
talking about crack cocaine being
No.
the major distraction
not
for
at all.
most pastors. They're good things and they're things that we have to do, but we also have to keep boundaries on them so that we keep the main thing, which
absolutely.
for churches is making disciples.
yeah, absolutely. And if you guys want more information on what we do as the Bonhoeffer Project to really help you develop a plan for strategic, intentional disciple making in whatever your context. You don't have to be the senior pastor at a church. It could just be, how do I make disciples in my small group that meets at my home? It's what the Bonhoeffer Project does, and we'd love to give you more information about that. But with that said, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for checking out the Bonhoeffer Project podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, you found it beneficial, leave us a comment, make sure you share it with a friend. If you want more information about the Bonhoeffer Project and how we can help you formulate your own disciple-making plan, check us out at thebonhoefferproject.com. As we always say, make disciples, let Jesus build the church.